know why, David, but sometimes, oh God, the transition's back. Sometimes it has your picture up there next to me, and sometimes it has your name.
Yeah, what up with that?
What up with that? I don't know. All right.
I'm seeing my picture.
And I'm not hearing your audio.
Now are you hearing me?
I am.
Technology.
I lost this fantasy challenge we did with draft.com yesterday. The mug versus the Doug. So It was Nick Denning versus me. Did you check the score? Nick, 224 to 196. He had Kemba Walker, James Harden, LeBron James, Karl Anthony Towns, and Joel Embiid. Really was LeBron. 64 points. That's tough to come back from. I went Lamb over Dwight. Should have gone Kaminsky, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But Lamb, 16, 2 rebounds, 5 assists. 5 assists. One beautiful one. Steal, a block. 30 points overall. Just as many as Kemba. Russell had 66. Andrew Wiggins hurt me, only 27 points. Well, 27 fantasy points. And then Jokic. See, I let my emotions get to me, David. I took Jokic because Adam Morris from Locked On Nuggets was in here.
Yeah, right. You want to be respectful and a good host.
Well, that costs me.
Hey, you know what? I'm feeling better about our call that Frank could be the breakout fantasy player for this team this year. Although Lamb is still playing well, but Frank, after a rough start,
that wasn't looking great in preseason.
It wasn't looking great last week.
Yeah. Now we're looking a lot smarter now.
We look so smart right now. Hey, you know what else is smart, Doug? You already have your new iPhone, but the new iPhone,
I don't want it.
Will be pre-sale. It was not a question and answer portion of this. This is the statement portion. Pre-sale tonight, buddy. Somebody's gonna be setting their alarm.
Good for you. Enjoy that strip good. Of black over the screen. It's not fully edge to edge. Hey, Rich is in the chat. He says, if we're going to finish first seed, who will get second now, the Cavs or the Wizards? Rich is pumped. He's hyped. I don't blame him.
I like it.
Hey, by the way, that fantasy draft that we did, draft.com, sign up, follow us on draft.com, LOH Doug, LOH Nick, LOH David, and join us for a little fantasy. More details next week. Draft Wednesdays. Let's start the show.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
This is Locked On Hornets, your daily podcast on the Charlotte Hornets and the NBA. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Search your podcast app for Locked On to get podcast on the NFL, the NBA, and fantasy sports. If you're not listening to Locked On NBA, great show hosted by our fair leader, David Locke, and real inside access to the NBA overall. He has these great guests, the scouts, the front office guy. These kind of anonymous characters that come on and give like really great analysis. So check that out if you haven't already. We are coming to you live from the Gittimer.com studios in BEA, beautiful uptown Charlotte, heart of the Queen City, always beautiful after a Hornets victory. We're going to fully recap that win over Denver, plus a lot more. I'm Doug Branson, joined by my good friend, the man, the myth, the legend, from the mean streets of Cotswold, David Walker.
Did you hear that? Doug? Was
that you, like, pre-ordering an iPhone? What is this?
No, that was me popping the top on a LaCroix.
Oh my God, LaCroix boys! Steve Bob's on vacation. I hate to break it to everyone. Not going to be here for Fun Friday.
He's been here a month. He's earned it.
Your Wi-Fi signal's bouncing off your LaCroix there, David. We'll get you back.
No Wi-Fi here, my man. I don't know what's going on.
Okay, DJ Quote saying ready to wake up at 2:45 a.m. and pre-order my phone. So you got somebody, David, to join you.
That's right.
Pre-order the iPhone X.
Yeah, it's the 10, but that's fine.
Double M. Okay. Double M15 in the house. What up, Ness? Join us on the live chat, youtube.com/Locked On Hornets. And he says, welcome to the NBA, Malik Monk. Oh, we're going to talk about that as well. So, David, I mean, I guess we just get right into it. Let's get into this Denver recap. 110-93 blowout victory for the Charlotte Hornets. And the big story going into this game was the return of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist after missing most of the preseason and the first 3 regular season games. He was on a minutes restriction in this one, got about 6 or 7 minutes per half, but did start the game. And part of him starting the game, David, even though he was going to be on a minutes restriction, was that the Hornets wanted to get off to a better defensive start in that first quarter. Did you think they accomplished that?
Well, I thought they certainly got off to a better start, that's for sure. I mean, their shooting was hot all night, but yeah, I think he brings another level to that starting unit and just the ability to defend out on the wing. So, I mean, it's certainly good to have him back. I thought he might be super winded at first, and maybe he did after that first 6 or 7 minute stretch, but I thought he looked pretty good. Took an early shot, so he must have been feeling good.
Yeah, I thought obviously he's going to look a little rusty offensively, and that's not necessarily his strength anyway. He's going to be looked to for defense, and they held the Denver Nuggets to 44% in that first quarter while MKG was in the game, 10 points, and then 23 for the quarter overall, and then 36, for that first half. So the Hornets getting off to a better start defensively, a lot of that, too, had to do with the fact that they weren't turning the ball over. Only 2 turnovers in that first quarter. That's going to be key to getting off to great starts because you don't give your opponent easy opportunities to score. So that was the story going into the game. But, David, the story coming out of this game were twofold. Frank Kaminsky on fire, consistently scoring in a variety of ways, not only from beyond the arc, but also inside with a variety of skill moves. And then Malik Monk finally, the lid finally coming off for Malik Monk. So David, I'll give you, dealer's choice. Which one would you like to start talking about?
I think we would be remiss if we didn't chat up a little Malik Monk because he's been struggling so bad, Doug. And he opened it up with that dunk. And then I think he had one more fall, and then he really got into a groove and found some nice looks, a lot of the same looks he's had, and just saw the ball go through the net, man. I think it really helped him. He looked a lot more comfortable. He was also playing with Kemba some, but he got some good looks, and it was obviously great to see him finally getting into a groove.
Yeah, and after the game, he said, it felt really, really good to finally see it go through the hoop. Here's what he had to say.
Felt too good. Felt great. Every shot was rattling in and out. I'm like, yo, come on. But coach told me to be patient, let the game come to me, and that's what happened tonight.
So a couple of important things from that clip. First of all, Coach Clifford meeting with him before the game, telling him, be patient, stick with it. There's a belief in Malik Monk from this team. They drafted him 11th overall, and the shots are going to fall. And I think the team believes that, and they just wanted to make sure his confidence was up. But I think the big takeaway from that clip, David, is that we saw Malik Monk coming into the league wanting to win Rookie of the Year, talking about how he played a lot of point guard in high school, and you could almost infer that he was saying like that the transition to point guard in the NBA and his offensive game in general would not be that different. And I think it's fair to say these first couple of games were a little bit of a wake-up call, right? That things would be different.
Yeah, for sure. And Clifford alluded to that in his post-game comments last night. You mentioned them meeting prior to the game, but Clifford talked about how useful it could be for Malik to be able to play both positions. And he also talked about like a lot of the things they do for Kemba on offense, like when he gives up the ball, he gets it back. And some of the sets, I guess, they run on offense, like they don't have that stuff in from Malik yet. So, I mean, it's still definitely a process. It's obviously clearly early, But yeah, that's a massive, massive jump, Doug. I mean, think about it from just 2 years ago, right? Not even 2 years, from high school to college, where, like you said, he really didn't play on ball, and now up into the NBA, it's just a chasm of a jump. And so to get used to that, to the more physical players, the guys like Bazemore, or I mean, even some of the point guards that are just going to be super quick on you. That's a major adjustment, and to be able to do that, bring the ball up, and then worry about your offensive game is a lot for a young guy. I actually think he's done okay. I think it would look a lot better had some of these shots fallen early, but it's not shaking his confidence. I think that's the big thing that you mentioned.
And if you're not watching here on YouTube, you didn't get a chance to see the video of Malik Monk, but before he goes into that, he has a literal sigh of relief. He says, felt too good. And I think, again, when I've had interactions with him in the preseason and people have seen him, give interviews and different things, what did he do, David? He exuded confidence, bravado. Yeah. And then he comes out these 3 games, turns the ball over, shots aren't going down, and I think it would have been impossible for just a little tiniest sliver of doubt to start to creep in. But the coaching staff was behind him. He's very confident in his offensive game. He finally, gets a few shots to fall, and after the game, a sigh of relief. It's nice to see. I think it will benefit him in the long run, the struggles of those first 3 games. And you mentioned Steve Clifford after the game. I've got that video as well, talking about the transition to point guard in the NBA. It's tough.
But it's different for him. He just played a whole year and probably most of his life where he's running around and they bring the ball to him versus now he's bringing the ball up the floor. And we have things that we'll do. We do it for Kemba, but we're not there yet where they give it up and they get it back. You saw some tonight with Kemba, and that's where he had that little spurt there in the fourth quarter, but we don't have all that stuff in, So I just like his attitude, and his defense the last 2 games has been a lot better also.
So Monk is, we've talked about this on the show, David. Monk is being put in a different position than I think maybe even the coaching staff would have envisioned initially, because of the lingering injury to Michael Carter-Williams and not even having their third backup point guard option in Julian Stone, who will be out a while with his hamstring issue. So Monk's having more responsibility at the point guard position than I think any of us thought that he would. Do you think that is hurting his development or helping his development?
Yeah, I mean, as Clifford mentioned, it's important for his development, which I think is the main thing. Right off the bat, I'm sure it's not easy for him to do all of that stuff. So I guess in the short run, I suppose, you could say it was hurting. You know what I mean? I don't think it's helping him get up to speed as fast as possible, getting to his strength, which is shooting. But over the long run, he's going to have to be able to do that. And I think for this team, actually, once you get Batum back, once you get Michael Carter-Williams back, Julian Stone, like if Malik has that experience, it's only going to be a positive for him, So I think that him doing it now may hurt him in the short run. And he's going to have down nights still, but I think he's going to have some good nights like he did last night as well. And I think that's the important thing. His development, they're going to need him to be able to do that at some point, and he's going to need to be able to do that too. So I think it's good in the long run.
Okay, a lot of talk on the chat right now about Frank Kaminsky, double M15, saying, hope this is the Frank that we see all year. David saying, I don't think we need to start the Frank starting question again, but I do expect him to be the closer. 28 minutes for Frank Kaminsky, 9 of 15 from the field, only 5 3-point attempts and only 2 makes. And I say only because of how much action he's getting in the paint and how effective he is. He finishes the game with 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists. David, those 3 assists, that's been a consistent mark for Frank Kaminsky as well. He's seeing the floor better, making great choices on the ball. He's just doing great things right now for the Charlotte Hornets.
And looks like a completely different player. I remarked during the game last night that he looks completely different from the last 2 years, barring,
David,
And last
David, you're having a few connection issues, making you sound like you're in slow motion. This is like an episode of Twin Peaks, I think. You're going to start talking backwards.
That was the normal talking.
All right, go
better?
ahead. Yes, Frank Kaminsky.
Sorry. Frank Kaminsky looks like a different guy, Doug. I mean, from the first week of the season even, but even last year, we talked so much about that stretch after the All-Star break where he had a really good month and he seemed a lot more confident. But this focus, and you mentioned it last week, he looks like he's all business. You know what I mean? And he is focused on making a move and taking advantage of where he has a mismatch. But his shots going in. I mean, some of these fadeaways are money in the bank right now.
Tough shots.
Yeah, real tough shots. So, but he's liking them the whole way through. So,
and he's what I like about Frank Kaminsky right now is that he's initiating contact. Go back and watch some of these maneuvers that he's putting on display in the paint, and he was going right at Wilson Chandler. He was going right at Paul Millsap. Both of those players are physical defenders, known as guys that want to get a body into you. And I think it goes back to the work that he's been able to put in this offseason because he has had the offseason to do that. He has not been injured. He had the chest issue, the lung issue last offseason that really derailed what he was trying to do to his body, because we've seen it so many times with these sort of tweener players that if they don't have the body right, then they can't get the game right. And I think you're seeing that. Frank feels comfortable in his own body, and when he's comfortable, he's out there initiating contact. He's finishing through contact, playing the most confident game that he has so far. 3 straight games now with over 18 points. And David, honestly, where would the Hornets be right now without Frank Kaminsky's consistent scoring off the bench, without Dwayne Bacon being more than a competent defender, somebody that could easily replace MKG, and you get that baseline of defense when he comes in for MKG in that game, and Dwight Howard's dominance on the boards? I think the Hornets would be 0-4.
Yeah, and Lamb, Lamb's been a consistent scoring threat as well. So they've had some guys step up. Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's a great point on Frank's health and him feeling good to start the season. That's something we highlighted and a reason we thought he may be able to make a little jump here in the first part of this season. But he just wasn't able to get comfortable last year. And by the time he did, the season was almost over. And so that really held him back last year. And this year he sounded focused on making up for that, and he certainly looks, he's not shying away from even these big guys. He's going into them, like you mentioned, he's looking for the contact, and he's taking the smaller guys down in the post. And I mean, 2 for 5 last night, Doug, but those threes look confident, they look good. He's hitting them with more regularity. So an all-around good offensive game right now for Frank Kaminsky, which is huge for the Hornets with all these guys out.
I'm pulling up these numbers now for the corner 3 because there's a lot of talk about Frank Kaminsky's passing. 3 assists last night, and he's been driving and kicking, and a lot of those kicks are going to the corner, and it's going to guys like Marvin Williams, it's going to guys like Dwayne Bacon, it's going to guys like Malik Monk, and the corner 3 has not been a cornerstone for the Hornets. You like what I did there? For the Hornets offense. And it's that contribution plus a few other guys, and I think the fact that you have Dwight Howard underneath the rim that's drawing the defense down closer to the paint, that's allowing the Hornets to get more involved with the corner 3. Frequency of the corner 3, 3rd in the NBA at 10.2%. We know the corner 3 has been established as one of the most efficient places that you can score on the floor. So, the Hornets have not been traditionally ones. They were 30th last year in frequency, 22nd the year before, 29th the year before that. Ever since Clifford's been here, they have not been a corner 3 shooting team. They're 3rd right now in frequency and 10th in percentage, shooting 40% from beyond the arc when it comes to the corner 3. So, again, I think that's a big part of Frank Kaminsky becoming an all-around player, is not only developing the three-point shot, That's come and gone. And not only these Dirk Nowitzki, Hakeem Olajuwon dream shake type moves he's putting on people in the paint, that comes with confidence, but also the passing, the vision. The game seems to be, and it's kind of cliche to say this, David, but the game does seem to be slowing down for him.
Oh yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
he's seeing things that he wasn't seeing previously.
Yeah, and I think the health is a reason that you can take a little more stock in this and not just say it's a small sample size. I mean, honestly, I think you can feel good about this continuing throughout the season. Hopefully, a little more assuredly than you could, if it was just out of the blue and you didn't have this injury last year. You know what I mean? He's healthy and he's feeling good. So that's always been the key with Frank. It seems like when he's confident and when he's ready to go, he's a much more effective player. But I'm with you. Much more decisive, and those moves he's pulling off, like the show and go and the kickback jumpers, they are falling now, and he's not afraid to use them.
And taking advantage of mismatches as well, David. He got one on Jamal Murray, and again just backed him down, turnaround jump shot. Knew Murray had zero chance at getting a hand anywhere near Frank Kaminsky. And he does a great job with that. For more on Kaminsky, let's kick it to our Inside the Locker Room segment with Steve. We'll hear from Clifford and Kaminsky in this one.
For him, it's purpose of play. It's his decision-making, when to drive, when to pass, when to shoot, and his movement, how he's playing off the ball. I mean, he's taking what the defense gives him. To me, that's his, I tell him this all the time. He'll tell you that, to me, for him to be the player he can be, he's got to be an all-around player.
I mean, I've always been a player that likes to have the ball. I like initiating offense. I like shooting. I've just been able to do everything. Like you said, there's just confidence there right now, and I think a lot of that has to do with having a full off season, having no break. I just felt comfortable coming into camp, and it's translated to this season.
Okay, David, there were a few things. It's easy to go all positive when you blow a team out 110-93. They were up by 20 most of this game. There was a little run at the end of the third quarter and the beginning of the fourth quarter where the Nuggets, I think they cut it to as close as 13 at one point. So they kept it double digits throughout the fourth quarter, but it required inserting Kemba Walker into the early fourth quarter, and you don't get to back down his minutes at all. 32 minutes, only 29 minutes for Jeremy Lamb in this one, so you got to bring down his minutes a little bit. But that's some of that is the fact that you have Malik Monk, a rookie, at the backup point guard position right now. Does that concern you at all? That Kemba has to come in, save the team again, gets 5 quick ones, one on a step back, a beautiful step back jumper, and then he knocked down a lot of his free throws, 9 of 9 from the line last night. Did that a lot in the fourth quarter. Does that concern you, David?
I think they were going to make a run at some point. The Nuggets are a pretty good and pretty talented team, and the bench for the Hornets had been playing so well all night. It's hard to fault them, but you'd like to see them focus and close it out to bring Kemba back in. I don't know that it's disconcerting. It's good to see Kemba come in there and just put in a quick little run by himself. I'll say that. But the minutes thing, I think that's the only part that really concerns you is he's playing so many minutes right now, and he has to. The difference with him on the floor up until this game was massive. So, sure, you'd like to close them out. They're going to make a run, though, and it's nice to have a guy like Kemba over there where you can't throw him back in there. But I think the minutes is the biggest deterrent to that.
I want to go back to what one of our commenters said in the live chat, David M., saying, I don't think we need to start the Frank Kaminsky starting question, but I expect him to be the closer, says David M. David, you've got Marvin Williams, who's been a little quiet to start the season. You've got Frank Kaminsky, his backup, on fire right now. I'm going to ask David about David. Is David M. right? Should we not start the Frank starting conversation, or is it time?
Well, it's funny, Doug. I don't know about you, but I noticed a little more bounce in Marvin's step last night. I mean, he was getting up the floor with a little more fluidity. He was exploding towards the basket. I mean, I thought he had one of his better games of the season last night. He looked a little more spry to me. And our good friend Nada noted me on Twitter saying that was pride in that bounce. His spot was on the line. And so I certainly, yeah.
You think so?
I think again it would take a big time drop off from Marvin and then a big time step up from Frank. But Frank's playing well, and if that is going well, I don't know that you mess with it right now. But I think having him close is certainly more in line with the thinking. I think again, we know how much Clifford values Marvin. We know how much they depend on him. And he has had a rough start to this season, but he's had that before, like you said a couple days ago. So I don't think it's on the cusp right now.
Here's what I think about this situation. You've got Frank Kaminsky with 28 minutes last night, Marvin Williams with 21 minutes. He's getting more minutes than Marvin Williams right now, and I don't expect that to end anytime soon. I think you start the game with Marvin Williams. I think you start the game with Michael Kidd-Gilchrist because you want to come out with a defensive mentality, not let certain guys get into a rhythm, not let a team get into a rhythm. Because the thing about the first quarter, to me, is that whoever wins the first quarter doesn't necessarily win an NBA basketball game because there are runs all over the place. Like we saw it in Atlanta, or when Atlanta came to town, like 20-point lead in the second quarter doesn't mean anything. But what the first quarter does mean is that you either let certain players get into a rhythm like they did with Tobias Harris in Detroit, or you don't. And that can have impacts throughout the game. And I think that's why Clifford likes to start the game with defense. So regardless of whether you start Marvin Williams or you start Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, I really think there are going to be other players that step up and get more minutes if they continue to play well. I think Frank Kaminsky is one of those players. I don't necessarily, maybe he closes games, maybe he doesn't. I think that's going to be dependent a lot on matchups and a lot on where they are, game situation. But I could definitely see Frank Kaminsky continuing to get a bigger role. See, I think we kind of get caught up on this label of starter. And on certain teams, it matters. And I think with like playoff contending teams or championship contending teams, when your starters are going to play, 36, 37 minutes, when you have a big three, then starting probably matters. But when you've got a team where everybody has to contribute in some form or fashion, I think this team is going to end up having a sixth man, a seventh man, and an eighth man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if they've got a healthy Nick Batum and they've got a healthy Kemba Walker in that starting lineup, I mean, you kind of got your scoring there, right? And I know that Clifford probably wants to keep some of that scoring punch coming off the bench. If you have Lamb, eventually, if you have Frank, if you have Malik, and then Cody Zeller, I mean, that's a pretty nice second unit. And he talks all the time about groups playing together. So yeah, I'm with you. I thought their minutes would be, maybe close to even, and that's where it may shake out. But look, Marvin's, got some age, got some miles on him, and his limits may continue to go down. But Frank's certainly playing well enough. I think the big thing is he's playing well enough for people to maybe start looking that way. But it's working for him. It's working for the team so far right now, and I think that's how it'll stay for a little bit.
I think this all stems back to the Giannis dunk for Frank. He got one. He got one over the Greek Freak, and it's like lightning struck his bat. It's like the plot of Rookie of the Year. Like he just suddenly has powers. I forget that. How did he get the powers? He broke his arm, right? What happened in Rookie of the Year?
I don't know.
Lightning struck his arm, right? I don't know. Anyway, something happened to Frank.
Something happened. He dunked on Giannis in Rookie of the Year, I think.
Right. And yeah. Angels came down from the sky and gave him powers. That's what I believe. Hornets look good right now, David, and I didn't expect this, honestly. When you talk about Nick Batum being out, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist being out for the first 3 games and limited minutes in this fourth, Cody Zeller, so important to the team, was supposed to be Zeller was supposed to be the guy, right? Mm-hmm. Zeller was supposed to be the player that gave them a mismatch the depth that they needed to take the step to get back into the playoffs. And without Zeller, it's been Frank Kaminsky. He's been the mismatch, which is crazy. Like Mike Malone after the game, Denver Nuggets head coach Mike Malone, said that Frank Kaminsky was the turning point in this game. They played two bigs, and Frank Kaminsky stretched those bigs out, and then when they tried to play him up, he was able to drive. That's the thing, his quickness. It's the same thing that we saw with Cody Zeller when he transitioned to the center role, is that he was able to use his quickness to get by defenders that couldn't guard him.
Yeah, it's unexpected, Doug, because we haven't seen it, right? I mean, we haven't seen this bench consistently be a force on offense or able to hold a lead or even able to stop people. So that's something we didn't know, and we didn't see it last year. That was kind of the issue. And so when all these guys are out and when you lose a key guy on the bench like Cody Zeller, then who knows? But that was the big thing for him and Malone and Monk and even Lamb is starting, but we didn't know that was going to be a consistent thing either.
And it's a team that's still trying to find its groove, right? We're still not seeing the Kemba Walker to Dwight Howard alley-oop hookup. Dwight Howard opening up a few three-point opportunities for Kemba Walker with the high pick and roll. But we're not seeing that two-man game between Kemba Walker and Dwight Howard yet. It's still yet to.
That's going to get better.
That's what I'm saying. That's going to get better. Yeah. So 2-2. I think you have to be blessed to be 2-2 at this point. And really, you're a couple of bad shot selections from Jeremy Lamb and Kemba Walker at the end of that Milwaukee game from being 3-1, or at least having a shot to be 3-1. Sure. I think with all of these injuries, and to me, it just says, this team right now fighting like hell.
Oh yeah, there's some teams that are not across
Denver.
The league, but
I thought Denver kind of gave up on that game. I thought
it was odd.
Like Dwight Howard was able to really, and Johnny O'Brien. Haven't mentioned him yet, but he had a fantastic game as well. 3 of 7 from the field. They've just got a lot of skilled big men right now. A lot of guys that could just, like Johnny O'Brien was taking guys off the dribble. He had the turnaround pull-up going as well from the baseline.
Hit a three. I mean, I felt a lot better after that Milwaukee game than you probably should feel after a loss. And I think it's clear that these guys felt a little inspired after that game. You know what I mean? They felt like they were right in that game. They could have played with a guy as a superstar. And everybody continued their play. We talked about the high level of play they got from just about everybody in that Milwaukee game. It fell right into last night. And I think you're right. The Kemba and Dwight thing is only going to get better. We should mention, Doug, free throws for Dwight last night.
7 of 11. And there were a lot of questions.
And was not shying away from contact. I mean, never does. But after going 0 of 9 and so much focus being on that, I mean, he was almost looking to get back to the line.
Yeah. And Clifford before the game saying, look, it's confidence affects concentration. And he hits them in practice. We've heard that before. We heard that with Shaquille O'Neal. They hit him in practice, and then the game happens, and something goes haywire with the confidence, and that leads to lack of concentration, and that leads to missed free throws. He was 0 of 9 in the previous game, comes back, and I think he knew, it's not like he went, well, I'm 0 for 9, whatever. Like, that hurts. And especially in a tight game like that, with a player that has that superstar mentality that wants to be a difference maker, 0 of 9 does not feel good. And I'm sure that was on his mind. And to see him respond with 7 of 11, very encouraging. And the fans loved it.
And also, I think he won the head games battle between and Jokic.
Jokic only 18 points. Trust me, I know. I lost my fantasy game against Nick Denning because of that.
But they were both going back and forth. At one point I thought it might get a little combustible, but I think he definitely got it in his head. He definitely frustrated him more so than the other way around. So
you got to get physical with Jokic. If you get physical with Jokic, if you foul, he doesn't want, like, he wants to get free in the lane so that he can pass. He can get that floater going. I don't think Jokic likes the contact. I don't think he likes the physicality.
And look how deep Dwight is getting on some of those post-ups. Even when he has Jokic on him, I mean, he is almost right underneath the basket. He got an and one late because he had such deep post position. And I can't remember. Maybe it was Monk. I can't remember who found him. Kemba maybe. But he is using his body in a way right now where he's just dominating guys, and Jokic is not a small man. So he was doing well to get down and get that post position.
Well, look, the bench is playing so well, David, that we're glossing over the fact that Dwight Howard had 15 points and 19 rebounds. And this is the fourth, here's the trivia for you, the fourth straight game of 15 or more rebounds for Dwight Howard. First time that's happened in Charlotte since Emeka Okafor all the way back in 2007. So
Wow.
Dwight Howard dominating the boards right now. 4 offensive rebounds, giving them second chance point opportunities. I think it's changing. Again, I think it's fundamentally changing the Hornets offensively, and then having someone inside. And I thought it would be a struggle for Dwight because Jokic would end up pulling him, further away from the basket, and they would be able to get Murray and Harris to the rim. And it started too early in the game, but I think everybody was just aware of that fact that if Dwight Howard was out of the post, being pulled away by either Jokic or Millsap, that there were guys like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and Marvin Williams and Dwayne Bacon who were crashing down on those Murray and Harris drives, and they ended up with pretty inefficient nights. Harris was 7 of 17, and Murray was 7 of 20. And you beat the Denver Nuggets if that happens. If you can limit, and Jokic was 8 of 11, but you limited his opportunities. That's what Dwight Howard did. He kept that 11 from first of all, 1 free throw attempt, and he kept 11 from being 15.
Right.
So, okay, this is a good show, David. A lot of, and it's always fun when the Hornets win, and we had a lot to dig into in this one. There's so much.
A lot to go over.
I just think the Hornets have the Houston Rockets coming in. That's going to be a tough matchup. We'll preview it tomorrow. And it's Dwight Howard's former team. There's going to be a little storyline there. It's another game at home, Friday night game at home. So,
yeah,
that's going to be a tough one.
That's going to be a tough one. But like I said, you've got to feel good coming off these 2 games. If he wanted to beat Atlanta, you got to think he's going to have a similar outlook against Houston. They went down to the wire last night against the 76ers up there. Needed a late game 3 to take that one. So, maybe that and the travel, they'll come out with some tired legs, and the Hornets can, make them run up and down a little bit and get them tired. One thing, Doug, I wanted to just note on the broadcast last night, if you don't mind, because I know you were at the game. I was covering it.
Yeah, give me the update.
Via the television. Stephanie Reddy, much, much more involved last night. I mean, focused. Yeah, featured several times, had 2 extended interviews, kind of like the Adam Silver interview on the opening night with Coach John Calipari and national championship head coach Roy Williams from UNC. So had 2 extended in-game action interviews with those 2 gentlemen. And also, I think even more importantly than that, had an extended breakdown on the telestrator of some of the defensive adjustments the Hornets were making and some of the defensive transitions they were doing last night. So, I mean, I thought that was
playing to her strengths.
Yep. And she was focused heavily on that broadcast, and much more so than she has been.
And this comes after Rachel Nichols of ESPN, The Jump, devoting a segment to the petition, to the outcry, to what she called the demotion, and which was, everyone knew it. Like, everyone that saw what happened when Fox initially announced this was like, oh, so you're demoting her to the sideline.
Right.
But they wanted to frame it as, no, she's a courtside analyst. She's, we're moving her closer to the court because we don't have anyone. It's like, okay, but you're demoting her to the sideline. And then the first couple of games, when she's not featured very often, they just reinforce that. And then they go and tell Rachel Nichols, well, we wanted 2 people in the booth. The 3, basically confirming a little bit what we had speculated, which was that that for them, the 3-person booth was not working.
Yeah, I mean, she kicked off the game, and was present during much more of it than she has been. So it was good to see her back. We'll see, Doug. I think this is a bit of a fluid situation. They're obviously listening.
It's uncomfortable. Yeah. The whole situation, because again, you're not your Fox Sports, you weren't really completely honest about it.
Yeah,
and I think whenever you do that, you set yourself up for awkwardness.
And we love Matt Carroll too. He was fantastic on our show over the offseason, but then they bring him in for the post game. I don't want to say out of nowhere, but I didn't see him during, he's not on during the game. And he brings some great insight. So I still think they've got some stuff to figure out. Obviously, they're still doing that and still tweaking it. Fortunately, they can tweak it, and I would encourage them to get as much Stephanie in there with the breakdowns, because that's her strength, and she knows
that's
so
what
much
people
about the
want
game.
to hear.
Yeah,
that's what people want to see. That's what she added. That was her element that she added to that broadcast when she was in the booth. So yes, play to that strength. That's all. Had they come out with the initial statement that they did and said, we want somebody courtside, but she's still part of the broadcast team, and then involved her like this from the get-go, I'm not sure. Maybe there still would have been the hashtag "Don't sideline Steph Ready." Maybe there still would have been a little bit of an outcry, but I'm not sure that you get the national, the Rachel Nichols and the who else came out and said something. Jamel Hill had something to say on Twitter. So I don't know if you would have gotten that if it was clear that she was being involved in the broadcast.
And the Rachel Nichols segment was good for me because she really broke down the difference between being in the booth and on the sideline from a technical standpoint. Like, that mic is not open. And this is something that you hinted at when we discussed it earlier in the week. Like, the flow of the game is so fast, you can't throw to her in the middle of a game or in the middle of a play for her reaction. And now we know that she literally cannot just jump in, right? The producer decides that.
Sure.
And so being out of the booth is different. And so for them to have dedicated segments, obviously they're trying to involve her more, and it was very good. But yeah, it's still the difference between being on the sideline and in the booth was a distinction. And I didn't understand the technicalities of it, but certainly they focused some time for her last night. They went away from the broadcast completely, right? And so they did a little like screen picture-in-picture type thing, which, like I said, I think they're still tweaking this thing. We'll see how it plays out, though.
You know what? Broadcast is never awkward. After the buzzer, our 5-minute post-game recap, only for our Patreon subscribers, patreon.com/LOH. Head over there, see the benefits of becoming a Patreon subscriber. Every single dollar that you contribute to this show goes to making it better with equipment and services that we use to get this show on air every day, and also all of the Inside the Locker Room segments. We're going to start doing some stuff with ESPN 730 as well, so all of this coverage comes virtue of your support, and we really appreciate it. Patreon.com/LOH, and get access to the After the Buzzer broadcast. Although, David, I have to tell you, so they assign seats on the second press row, and I haven't gotten my assigned seat yet, and so I've been squatting with my friends at ESPN 730. But last night I got to sit beside the legendary Bill Rosinski, and just a Charlotte broadcasting legend. But he's my favorite person to sit beside so far because he came to the game and said nothing, and I love it because I'm in the zone. Like, I'm focused, I'm taking notes, and sometimes you get somebody beside you. I won't name any names. Justin Thomas. Just kidding. Love you, buddy. But, I don't want to chat. I want to, I'm focused. I'm trying to, watch the game and, tweet and figure out what I want to talk about after the game. So, Bill.
You're working, man.
Man, he was in the zone. He was focused, and he didn't say a word, and I love him for it. But when I went on the air for the After the Buzzer, it was a little intimidating, David, having Rosinski beside me.
You had an audience. You had a live audience there, a live veteran.
He was just sat there through it, and I'm like, I don't know if he's listening. Is he? Oh my God, it was nerve wracking. But
next time, just lean over to him.
I should have gotten him involved. Bill? Hey, Bill, what did you think of the game? I don't know what kind of reaction I would have got to that. But yeah, so tune in After the Buzzer. Get subscribed on Patreon, and then you'll get access to that show. Peter joining in on the chat here last second says, thing of the broadcasting unit as a basketball team. Last season, we had 3 primary ball handlers in our offense. Transferring her strengths on the sideline is like adding intangible king Cody Zeller. Yes, if they involve her, that's the thing. That was the difference last night, is getting her involved, playing to her strengths, doing the things that as a coach, as a former coach and a former player, adding that level of analysis to the game only makes it better. More Stephanie is better, I think. And all of us agreed with that. I think, David, our point when you and I discussed it was just that I think you and I agreed that something about the 3-person setup was a little off. And how, I think Fox.
Well, certainly they felt that. Yeah.
They felt that. And I think they're trying to negotiate and figure out what does that next step look like. And it sounds like, David, that they found a little bit of a better situation last night. So we'll continue to keep an eye on it. The hashtag Don't Sideline Steph Reddy. Great hashtag there by at Hornets Gifts, and did Sports Despair, at Sports Despair. I was thinking, did Charlotte win last night? That was his initial.
He's changed so many.
I know. I can't keep up with it. All right, we're done here. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Hornets here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Hornets. Follow us on Instagram where we post pics and behind-the-scenes stuff. Shoot us your Hornets questions and thoughts to buzzbuzz@lockedonhornets.com. We're back again tomorrow. Fun Friday. What's bugging Doug? There's a few things that are my nerves.
Good luck to all you iPhone pre-orders.
I'll reveal those to you tomorrow. For David, I'm Doug. Go Hornets. Go America. Let's swarm Charlotte.